Yeah, that's cool. I can see what's being shown on the right. That's great. SharePoint lists. Yay! Yeah. I'm going to talk a bit about today how you can spice up your lists. SharePoint Online has added some new things starting about a year ago now that has made lists really transformed lists and gives developers like myself some wonderful tools and some great power to be able to do things. How many people are familiar with the modern lists? Over half the room. That's good. So we're looking at a modern list here, and yeah, that looks a little better. It's nice and responsive. We'll adjust as much as it can. And give some new controls, new ways to interact with it, with the, come on. There it goes. This new bar on the right, I don't remember what they call it. I apologize. Details pane. There we go. So the new details pane. A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with modern. I tend to fall on the hate side so far just because I have used SharePoint for so long. There's a lot of functionality that's not in modern yet. But the goals are good, and I look forward to them working in all of the functionality that we used to have. So this list itself is not very fancy. We've got a few columns here. We're going to call this our art list, and we have a few things in it, various different information, and the reason we're calling it art is what we'll get to in the very last part of this presentation. So right now it's just all plain Jane, boring. But Microsoft introduced column formatting and customization. Has anybody played with this yet?
No, but I've been very excited too.
Okay. I decided to pull up the article and just kind of run through it with you as an introduction. There is a ton that it can do. And we're going to go one step further before we're done here with this presentation. The best way to sum it up is in these two screenshots. Here's our plain list, and then here's with the custom column formatting applied. So the effort, the assigned to, and the status have all had, let's zoom in for you a bit, customizations. And we're going to apply these three customizations plus one other, and then we're really going to go out on a limb and show you where your creativity just goes as far as your mind can go. Column formatting, how's it different than a field customizer? We're going to talk about field customizers when we're done, the last part that we talk about. So I'm going to kind of gloss over it. The column formatting, basically you build a JSON string that you pop in, and it tells SharePoint how to format the column. You can see this is the little window that comes up for pasting the format in. We'll get into this some more later. Very basic JSON here. It simply takes the value of the field and returns it on this one. Now we have the title of the current field that gets returned. And they just kind of build up on it, return the lookup value or a lookup column. A lot of this is, you're like, so what? It does that already. But this is the foundation. So now what if we wanted to do some formatting of numbers? Well, let's start doing that in our plain Jane list. So here we have our list. I'm going to refresh just to make sure I got everything running still. Okay, let's take the fun level and change it. All we have to do is click on there, column settings, format this column. Now keep in mind this is a modern list. Your classic lists you won't be able to do this with. Okay, we're going to go copy our JSON snippet. Paste it in there and hit save. Boom. That's it. We just got bars on the numbers, just like that. And don't be too intimidated by the JSON that's over here, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Back in this article, so I can find it. This says there are several examples available in the repository. So on GitHub, there is a repository of samples. Let's go back one level. There we go. SharePoint list formatting samples. Hey, look at that. There's the 3 that I'm going to show you. I got a 4th one from here too that is a nice transition into the last part that I'm going to talk about. So you can just come in here, find, here we go, column samples or view samples. I'm not sure the difference between the two. Click on column samples, and here's a whole bunch of pre-built formattings that you can use. I just picked 4 of them out of here and copied them into my little notepad here, modify them a touch so it fits my list a little better. So the next one is modifying a person field. You can see in here, we get down to it, we're changing the H, we're creating a link within the person field. And that link is going to be a mail to the person's email. And you throw on a subject and a body. Have any of you done this with a mail to link before?
Yeah.
Yeah? Good. Yeah. You don't have to just have an email address in there. You can pre-populate the email. I'll go ahead and click on one of these so you can see it happen. In this case, we have a subject. We're going to say the email subject is join up. I can't zoom in on that one. Sorry, it's so small. And then the body is going to be current field. The current field is a person. The title is their name. So it's going to be their name plus some line breaks. Please send me more information. Click this link for more info, and it's going to throw in a link into the email that has links to the item that we just clicked on. Okay. Fancy? Let's take a look at it, see what it looks like. So we take our person field. This is just a regular user or group column. Format the column. Let's pop in our JSON. Save it. Part of the JSON specified the envelope icon, and you can see at the bottom, link to it is mail to. Let's go ahead and click on it. was working earlier. I tested this before I came.
Sorry, I've got a text from a couple of people that want to join. What's the link to be able to join in?
We put it on the Twitter feed. Go to the UT SharePoint.
Yeah, the mail to you link was working. Now it's broken.
SharePoint Utah. I think the Twitter feed for that SharePoint Utah.
Oh, it looks like I've got an error. If you look at the URL, the body says equals at current field dot title. That should have the name in there. Yeah, I'm not going to debug in front of you, so.
You're not using Microsoft examples, are you? Because they never.
Well, the trouble is I tweaked it. It did work. So, okay.
So what's the date that they're published? With the
Yeah. The status column, let's go ahead and format it. Okay, now we have our statuses. Planning, it's a nice little arrow. In progress turns yellow and has the exclamation point in the circle. Complete, nice and green. And then this one here, remember we left that field blank earlier. So now we're saying, problem, this is blank. And then another complete. Okay, so we're building up the visual interest in this list. That's nice. Did anybody do this before in SharePoint? Some of this stuff you could do before is just rather tricky and not really supported. So you've done it?
Well, I've done this exact thing that you're doing. I didn't do it in previous SharePoint, but I found for me one of the hardest things was that if there was a problem, debugging it was really difficult. They don't really give you an error message, like if you say invalid JSON or something like that, it just notes and stops working. If there's no error message or hey, you're kind of missing a semicolon or something, no, it just shuts down entirely. So you really got to make sure that your JSON structure is right. You've got all the right fields in there, otherwise it just doesn't.
Yeah.
You still have the email thing. Well,
right.
You at least got the email icon to show up. Yeah,
the icon showed up. The link is there. It's just the link doesn't work because it's improperly formatted. So the JSON worked. It's just what it generated was bad.
That was also a few months ago, so I wasn't sure if their debugging process for this had changed or improved at all.
Not that I've seen. Yeah. So we've got this other column over here. We've labeled it read more. What these are ISBN numbers for books. Okay, so what? It's a number. Wouldn't it be great if you could show like a thumbnail of the book right there instead of the number?
Yeah, let's do that.
Or have a link to that book to go peruse it or buy it or anything like that. So one of the samples they had in there uses a free API. It's basically a REST API. You pass the URL and it will send you back a thumbnail of the book's image. I had a lot of troubles finding books that they had in their catalog. Seems to be a fairly old catalog. So let's put in, and I was blown away when I saw the JSON for this. Look how simple that is.
Can you zoom out or blow it up at all?
Yeah, let me get font.
Well, I saw another case about this where I think it was done through API now, JSON. But there's all blur features where when you're presenting, you can blur private content to your mouse over. So you have people's emails on the screen, but in their presentation, it doesn't show.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with it. when I saw this one, I was just like, that is so simple. Just take and produce an image. Make the source the URL that's here. Okay, so let's pop that in. And there we have some of our books, the ones that could find images for. Now you'll notice this top one has no image. They don't have that book in their catalog. And like was mentioned earlier, there's nothing really said about, couldn't find it. It's just disappeared. It would be great if it just showed the ISBN number there instead of showing nothing now. Okay. So that kind of leaves you going, okay, we can do quite a bit with the JSON. And indeed you can. It's all in a supported manner as well. Unlike what we did in prior years, where we would write custom JavaScript and CSS and apply them somehow to the view and to the list. There were many different ways to do it. Now we have a way given to us by Microsoft that's supported, and we can do it right like that. And then the community has gone off and given us a whole bunch of sample, hey, here, try this, try this, try this, in that GitHub.
What does this look like to be quick at? Does it preserve that format?
Good question. So let's switch to quick edit. It does not. It goes back to the original data.
That would be a good way to be able to edit stuff that's...
Yeah. So keep that in mind. All we are doing is changing how SharePoint is rendering that field value in this list view. Okay? That's all we're doing. We're not changing the data. If you were to export the data to Excel, you would see what you're seeing in the screen here. If you were to call a REST query on it, you would see what you see in the screen here. You wouldn't have the email link. You wouldn't have the URL for the book icon or any graphic for the bar. Okay. So, do you guys view that as a pro or a con?
Pro. But I'm
Greg says pro.
say it's pro because then you're editing. It'd be nice to be able to have a custom format for this view. That to me would be the ultimate.
What do you mean?
So just like our other view, you have the custom formatters available. This is a different view, right? You've switched to quick edit, so
oh, gotcha.
Another set of code.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because maybe you don't want the email icon in there with it, or the picture of the book. You know, you actually need the ISBN number there. But you know, the fun level coloring, you know, that might just help you say, hey, it's red, green, blue. I need to edit the red ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that brings another question: is like, if it's per view, if you created a view based off that one, would it be there?
Let's try it. Just create a new view. See if it keeps all those settings. And it appears that it has. Now, here's a real fun question.
Can it be different format?
Can it be different? So let's take the formatting off. Okay, so test does not have it. All items does. To read more of the books. So that formatting data is stored in the view.
I was really questioning if you can do it in old library properties based on current. It's probably the same process.
There we go. Yeah. The conditional formatting, that JSON is stored in the view. When you copy a view, you're taking a copy of the view. So, yeah. Okay. Let's take it up a notch. So I had a project late last year where they were dealing with a bunch of art pieces, and the document library was storing the files, pictures of the art pieces. And instead of seeing the file name in the list, they wanted to see the thumbnail of the art piece next to the metadata of the art piece. So we've got a thumbnail column here. And what this is, it's a lookup column. And it looks up to site contents, the documents library. In the documents library, we have some files, various different file types. A PDF, a PowerPoint, an Excel, JPEG, a Word doc, and another JPEG that's you're gonna have to visualize with this one because I don't actually have an X-ray file. So just think of this as an X-ray file.
We can see through you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm probably going to lose 7/8 of the room at this point, because what I'm going to start talking about now is SharePoint extensions. How do I describe SharePoint extensions? If you're familiar with the web solution packages, SharePoint extensions are similar. However, they are driven by the client side. SharePoint Online, you cannot host custom code. No DLLs will run in SharePoint Online. You can't upload them and have them run. Any compiled code won't run there. You have to run it somewhere else if you need to do something like that, like Azure. Well, with extensions and the SharePoint framework is what they're based off of. You get to write your own code. It's client-side code. You write it in TypeScript, and it compiles to JavaScript. If you really feel brave enough, you can dump all of the templates and setup that has been done for you and write all the JavaScript yourself. But why waste your time? Here it is. Okay. The SharePoint Framework Extension. Microsoft has a nice little, what is it, 4-part, 5-part tutorial on how to create extensions. If you're looking to learn how to create extensions, I highly recommend you start here. No, we don't want to restart now. Definitely not. Go away.
It's tutorials.
Yeah. That's okay. Like I said, an extension is client-side code. Basically, it's JavaScript that runs on your SharePoint site and does various different things for you. There are web parts that you can create. There are list views. You could actually add your own commands into the bar up here on the list. And then there are field customizers. We're going to talk about field customizers.
We might want to mention that the extensions are site collection specific. To create an extension, you have to install any site collection menus or not.
Yes, you do need to install it there. If you're careful, you can write it so it's reusable. With this particular extension I'm going to be showing you, I figured it was something that people would probably want to use on other site collections, so I made sure it didn't have anything specific to the site collection. All it needs is a lookup column that looks up to a document library. That's it.
So you use it on online too? Or
So it only works in online.
only works in
Yeah. Now, it has been rumored, and maybe there's been more clarity on it since I heard it, that SharePoint 2019 will support the SharePoint framework.
Yeah, they're bringing the modern experience.
It won't be the same level that we have in SharePoint Online, because Microsoft is developing for SharePoint Online first, and then once they prove it out there and find that it really is something people want, and they work the bugs out there, they prepare it for on-premise if people really want it there. Yeah.
Okay, stupid question. Is there another site similar to like the Content Hub that pushes it down to all your sites you can use the apps? Is there something that would push it down to all your sites?
An app catalog is what you're talking about. An app catalog, you can upload a solution there, and you can either go to your site and pull it in, or you can actually, from the app catalog, push stuff out to sites. Personally, I think that's the preferable way to push them out, because then when you have an update, you can update it in the app catalog and you can say, go push it out to all the sites that it's in. And you can mix the two, okay? You can have some sites that subscribe to a solution in the app catalog, and you can have that same solution push out to some other sites. It can be mixed. It's just when you update the solution in the app catalog, somebody in the site, if it's did its own subscription, is going to have to do the update in order to get the changes. Okay. I'm looking for. Here it is. So the tutorials here on Microsoft's site walk you through how to get started. Even the very first one, it's actually a little farther up. Getting started with the SharePoint framework walks you through installing the various different pieces like Gulp and NPM and IDE, such as Visual Studio Code. It goes through each of those steps on how to install and get your machine set up to do this stuff. Once you get down into it, you just kind of follow the instructions. They got step-by-step what to do. They don't look like they make a whole lot of sense now, but that's because we've skipped several tutorials already. This is what you end up with, and that is really small. How's that look? You go through the steps in the tutorial to stub out a project, get it started, and it runs through some templates and generates much of what you see shown here. The beauty of all of this is now we're into development, and really we can do whatever we want. How many people have worked with MS Graph before? Cool. Were you aware that MS Graph you can get thumbnails for your documents? Yeah. At Ignite last year, Microsoft announced this. At that time, they supported over 270 different file formats. X-rays files is one of them, which is why I threw it in here, even though mine's not really an X-ray. Just pretend it is. CAD files, all the Office file formats, a whole slew of file formats. When I attended Build this year, that number was now over 300. Over 300 different file formats. So with Graph, you can say, give me a thumbnail image of that file. It doesn't matter that it's not a JPEG or a PNG or a GIF. Graph can do it. It'll generate one for you. Reads the file and generates one.
Is it looking directly at like stores?
So Graph looks at the file that's stored wherever you put it. So let's say it's in a document library. That's what we're doing here today. And it says generate an image. Now you'll notice, let's go back here to our library. When we select one of these and get the info pane, we get a thumbnail. That's what it's doing here. It's using Graph to read the file and generate a thumbnail. So we can do the same thing by calling Graph. So now that we're into the realm with the field customizer, where we get to do whatever our mind thinks of, because now we're developing, we can use Graph to generate the thumbnails. So just like the book with the ISBN, it was calling out to a service to get an image and then putting the image in here. We can do the same thing with over 300 different file types. Yeah, John.
So it's doing that dynamically at the time that this page renders.
Correct.
So if I had a very large view with thousands of items, that could really slow things down.
Yes.
Because it's having to render those every time. It doesn't render it and save it with it.
In SharePoint, when you upload a document to a document library, that's the moment that the thumbnail is generated. And it's stored and saved in SharePoint. Your view is just going and getting that image and bringing it down.
So the image is already in existence. You have to just say,
That's
getting this thumbnail.
Yeah.
The thumbnail you're talking about is a little different. Would it do that for a Word document?
I thought so.
Okay. Graph will cache the image once it's been called, and Microsoft will keep it around for a little while, so the next call will go faster. But eventually they purge it out of their cache, and it takes longer for it to do. If you have a 160 megabyte X-ray file, which is not uncommon, it's going to take a while for it to read it and generate the thumbnail. What I discovered with this project, I'll go ahead and skip to that since you brought it up, is that yes, indeed, and all of this is running client side. Remember, it's JavaScript. It runs in the browser and is doing all this how to render that field. Okay, so it's placing the call out to MS Graph that then returns back the bytes for the image. Okay. And for each row in the list view, it's doing that. Now, modern lists don't show everything right away. I didn't build a list long enough here to demonstrate this, but you'll notice they're progressive. You scroll down, it loads some more. You scroll down, it loads some more until you finally hit the end of the list. What I have found is that Microsoft hasn't fully tested the field customizers, and it ends up tripping over itself, and you get sections where it doesn't execute the code, and then you'll scroll a little more, and then it'll execute properly again.
So under that idea, what happens if you sort a list as a large list?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start running it, and we'll do that. Okay. Okay, so I was looking for my README, and I'm not finding it. Oh, here it is. So here's my README file. This is what it looks like to the developer. It's a .md file. Anybody know what MD stands for? Markdown. I was going to say markup. Markdown. And this is how it shows in the browser. Much easier to read. It gives the developers a way to write documentation that can be read. And this is the documentation I put together for this field customizer. Gives somebody, maybe somebody comes in after me and needs to work on it, and they're like, how does this work? What's going on? How am I supposed to develop this? How am I supposed to test it? I gave all that information in the Markdown file, which then just shows up automatically in our repository. The key part here is these two lines for debugging. Okay. We're going to gulp serve, no browser, a field customizer. Gulp serve starts up a browser for you and shows whatever has been rendered, yeah, kind of generated in the gulp server. Okay. No browser says to gulp, don't start the browser, because in this case there's no need. We just need a server running. So let's go ahead and start that up. You'll notice I'm in, that is really small. I don't think I can make that bigger with my command prompt. I'm in the path that my solution is in. So when I execute gulp serve, it's going to say to gulp start the solution that is in this folder. Okay. We'll run it. And it's going to run through a whole bunch of lines that, if something goes wrong, give you an idea of what happened, so you can fix it. And we're looking for this line right here, reload after so many milliseconds. Now I know it's done. We've spun up a web server, we've compiled the JavaScript, and we've started that web server running. It's now serving. And it's going to serve under localhost and a port. Remember, this is for debugging. Okay. So now we take this line here, which we don't need to modify because I handily created my column as the name thumbnail. If I'd created the column with a different name, all I'd have to do is change it here. We've got the ID of the feature, basically, the column customizer, field customizer, sorry, and where everything's running, okay? All we have to do is pop that string on the end here for debugging, refresh, It's going to ask me, should I allow debug scripts? Warning, warning, little sirens going off here. Yeah, I know, that's mine, that's okay. Load it. And here it goes. It's setting off. So in the back, it's taking the file name, which used to show here. It's going out to graph and saying, give me a thumbnail image for that file, and then showing it in here. Okay. Even our Word doc has a thumbnail. And if we look at the Word doc, you see it really does match. The first page of the document is what gets generated as the thumbnail. Okay.
Can you add some text there? See if the thumbnail.
Sure.
Sorry.
We'll make it big enough that it shows up in that little tiny thumbnail. There it is. Okay, we're going to save it. Oh, it's already saving because we're online. Saved. Okay. Close that. Let's refresh. Load the scripts. And there it is. Pretty handy. Over 300 file types. Now, what I haven't figured out yet is why don't we have a thumbnail for our Excel file? Not sure. Because if we look at the file, information, oh, now it just says spreadsheet. Earlier, it used Excel services and rendered the Excel file over here for me. So maybe that's why we don't have a thumbnail. So with this, what was that? Demo XLSX. Yeah. This one's the one that we can get it for. And it'll come up here. But you notice it used Excel Online to render that. I think that's why we're not getting it.
I think that's different than it's actually loading an Excel file. Right there.
Yeah, it does look like that, huh? So now we have a much prettier list, much more interactive. We were able to provide to the customer a list that gave a thumbnail of their catalog of images next to the information about the image. And it really doesn't matter if they upload a Word doc, a PDF, or any other file format. Most other file formats, they'll still get the image. When we first launched the product, we moved files over from I think it was from a file share, and it wasn't sorted all the way. There were some PowerPoints and Word docs that were marked as being images for that piece of art. Didn't matter to this thing, it showed a thumbnail anyway.
It's a beautiful looking Excel file.
So just threw one together for this. Does it?
Because on your art one, you're actually seeing the art picture. You're seeing whatever the art is.
Exactly. Yeah. SharePoint Framework Extensions, and a lot of the SharePoint Framework stuff is written in TypeScript. It's a little tricky to get used to at first. If you've done a lot of C# and JavaScript, it's not too bad. I kind of view it as a mix between the two languages, almost a marriage between the two. And in the end, it helps you write a lot better JavaScript code because of the type checking that it has. So, any questions? That's pretty much all I've got. Anything you'd like to see? Yeah.
Can you just show everybody a graph explorer? Just a queries.
Oh, yeah.
So I can see what graph you do.
And that's just a small sample of what can do. Microsoft Graph Explorer. This tool allows you to take a few prepackaged commands, queries for graph, and execute them against a demo storage base. It's kind of like AdventureWorks. Or once you sign in, you can change it and point it at your own tenancy and run those same commands against your tenant. As was mentioned, there are quite a few examples in here. You can see some of the ones I've ran in the past.
We demonstrated this to our developers, and they were excited because for once we weren't pushing Microsoft on them, we were pushing something that they could utilize Microsoft data. So basically, you can build it in whatever you want in, just go get this API, and use these commands to go get a service that however you want to service it.
Yeah.
So they felt like they weren't being pressured, to give up whatever methodologies they are built.
Yeah. For Graph, SharePoint was kind of the latter edition. SharePoint was ignored for quite a while in Graph. There was a lot you could not do. It's getting a lot better. Microsoft for a long time has said, go use Graph, do everything in Graph, do everything in Graph. But we couldn't, as SharePoint people, do everything in Graph.
I thought they were phasing it out. They're not phasing it out.
Not that I've heard. Yeah. There are two different types of Graph. Maybe that's where the confusion is coming in. There is an older version of Graph. There's Graph, there's Microsoft Graph, and there's, I think, MS Graph? Office Graph. There we go. And yeah, one of them's being phased out and replaced with this one that has everything in it. It's originally developed to work with Office 365. So you can pull your emails from here. You can pull address book entries, things from Teams, all sorts of stuff from Graph. If it's in Office 365, Graph is intended to be able to surface it through an API.
So how do you take it to the next level? So this is like a dev environment, right? So it's running a dev server that ran a build.
Yeah.
So if you want to deploy it through an app, or how do you?
Let me get back to that document, that README, because it has it in there. Deploying the SharePoint solution package. So I found that if the app was previously added to a site, because all the demos are assuming clean slate, you need to deactivate it, then you need to remove it, which can be a little tricky.
Even if you version it and repackage it.
Yeah. Yeah. Versioning is a very good thing to do, by the way. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. So I've got instructions in the README that talk about all the different things that I learned as I put this, because I had to remove it and redeploy it and remove it and redeploy it. I must have done it 50 times in a day as I was developing it. So I got pretty slick with it. I was exaggerating 50 times. It was maybe 20. Because by that time, I was pretty far along, and I was trying to get it deployed prod and working well. So you can see we've got some PowerShell commandlets to execute to actually remove it. And then instead of, you have some different gulp commands that you run to package it. The tutorials have a lot in them about this, broken up into different parts. You can see I'm talking about using a CDN here. There is a post in the tutorials about using a CDN. Posting it, registering it to a column. I don't know if Microsoft has changed this since I put this together. I last touched this, I think it was January or February. And with Office 365, things are changing all the time. But you can see I've got, hey, post, create a post, HTTP post to this URL with these headers in order to attach that column to the customizer. So that all gets done for you automatically when you're doing the dev, but when you go to launch it, I had to do this sort of stuff to get it hooked up. Great questions. Any others?
Was this type of stuff documented on the tutorials, or is this kind of trial and error?
This last step, how to register it using a REST API, is something I figured out. In the tutorials, you can see that this is happening, and when you start calling REST get statements on your list, you'll see this exact data in there. And so I was like, well, hey, I can just do a post to my list and set the values myself. Yeah, John.
One of the presentations I watched, or that I attended down at SharePoint conference, was also talking about the fact that they're coming up with row formats. So they're based on the value in a column to be able to do something with an entire row. And they have some demos on that.
Cool.
So I don't think it's out yet.
Yeah.
Coming soon to SharePoint Online or whatever, but they had some really compelling demos where it could hide rows if it had certain characteristics, or they, you know, put a red box around the row or have it flat. I mean,
yeah.
Doing all different kinds of things. So this whole cell formatting and field formatting is cool. It's powerful, but there's more coming, as you said. We've been going through pain points with SharePoint Online as they add new features. Sometimes they don't tell you about a new feature until it shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, I had one of our interns a few days ago ask me, lo and behold, it was a column level security question. 11 years later, I still get them. And with this presentation in mind, it occurred to me that you could create a field customizer that checks, should this person be seeing this data? And just like our book on Berlin that doesn't show up, just simply not show anything if they're not supposed to see it. Now, it's not security. It's still obscurity, because they can go to edit the list and it will show the value. They can go to view the properties on the item and it will show the value. But it is a way to control what's being shown in the view. You start to make things crazy pretty. Okay. Well, thank you. I hope you found this enjoyable. I hope it gets you thinking about some great things, about some things you can do in your own SharePoint Online tenancy with modern